episode 190 of RichardMetalFan interviews, calling from Zoom, and I'm on the phone with Bill from Decrepit Birth. How are you doing today, Bill?
Doing good. How you doing?
Not too bad. Not too bad. It's great to be able to have you on. So, kind of like the format is, I want to do like a rundown of your discography and talk about like your musical history. So, take me back to young Bill Robinson. So, kind of growing up in California, what were the first bands that got you into metal and what made you want to be a vocalist?
When I was a really little kid, I got into Kiss, and then I went through a whole hardcore punk thing because metal was like air bands. And when punk started selling out, and when I say hardcore, I'm talking punk. Like that's hardcore, not that bullshit they do today.
Yeah.
But when punk sold out and started getting poppy and like socially acceptable, I discovered Suffocation, Effigy of the Forgotten, and other bands like Brutality from Screams of Anguish album, and I can't remember them all. Oh, Exhorter. My sister actually turned me on from the punk scene, turned me on to Rain and Blood, and then I found Exhorter, Slaughter in the Vatican, and was like, wow. And then it went from there to Suffocation and Brutality and Cannibal, Deicide, Morbid Angel, stuff like that.
All right. And were you in any bands before starting up Decrepit Birth, or was Decrepit Birth your first band?
That was my first band.
Yeah. Yeah. And how'd you get to know like Matt and everybody else in the band at the time? Because I believe you all formed in 2001.
Yeah, we met in '95 and started forming the band. It was just we could never get a drummer. You know, we were trying to keep it hush hush because we kind of had our own thing going, being as super technical. And bands weren't really doing that kind of like the In Time Begins stuff. They weren't really doing that at the time. And then, anyway, getting back to your question, I had a buddy named Lee Hughes that I turned him on to Exhorter, and he just was like, "Oh, I want to play guitar," and I just started showing him like power chords on guitar, and that's all I knew from the punk scene. And he took lessons, got pretty good pretty quick. Nothing, not shredding or nothing, but pretty good pretty quick for a beginner. And ran into Matt and introduced me to Matt. And so then we were all playing, and as Matt's songs got more and more complex, Lee dropped off, and I stuck with Matt. I just kind of had a feeling that it could do something. Even if we just figured locally, we didn't plan to get where we got.
All
I love
right.
the band.
Okay. And tell me about like the first album and Time Begins. Of course, you eventually you played locally around California, and then you got signed to your first label, Unique Leader Records. How did they find Decrepit Birth?
We were looking for drummers, and so we were really inspired by Deeds of Flesh. They were a local, like, you know, California band, not local to us, but California. And so we saw they came to Santa Cruz once. They were really good. So we found out their drummer had kind of, I think, quit the band, but was living somewhat in our area. We didn't know how to contact anyone. Internet was shit back then. And so when we find out that they were playing, we drive to LA or drive to wherever, you know, and you know, that's not close to us, but we were committed. So we drive 6, 7, 8, 9 hours for shows, try to hook up with those guys. And I think we were in Ventura at this one show. And we were just humble. We almost didn't want to approach. We felt stupid. We'd go and see the show and just leave. You know, we'd be like, duh, just not wanting to toot our own horn or just not being fanboys. And finally, we were like, screw this. You know, we're going to talk to Eric. And at that point, Derek Boyer was playing bass for him, like filling in for Jacoby. And we were like, who the hell is this albino looking guy on bass? And, you know, we asked him, hey, we need to talk to Eric, you know, after their set was done. And he's like, what do you need? I'm the one to talk to. What do you need? Eric's out drinking. He's not going to be back. And we explained, you know, what we're doing. Found out he was actually in Deprecated, and we were fans of Deprecated. He was Deprecated, basically. And so we hit it off with Derek. Derek turned one of our old loop drum machine songs. It wasn't like nowadays where you had a program. It was like a loop machine. So you had to, it was a pain in the ass to record, but we recorded really crappy version of Rebirth of Consciousness with that. machine, and gave that to Derek, who went around the world, on tour with whoever he was with at the time, so many bands, and was showing people it, turned it on to Eric. Eric was interested in signing us, and he said if we sign with Unique Leader, he'll get us a drummer for the album. And that's where Tim Young came into play.
Yeah. And I know this year does mark the 20-year anniversary of the debut album And Time Begins, which is, in my opinion, a very underrated death metal debut album. So what was the thought process going into making that album? And do you have like a certain viewpoint about it now as opposed to when you first put it out 20 years ago?
Just, I think the way Matt would word it, we've matured as musicians. We're not like cookie cutter, like million riffs a song. But at the time, that's what we want to do. Matt was really young. I was younger. We were all about just, I don't know, extreme, if that makes sense. Matt wanted to be mile a minute, no repeating any riffs, and just doing things that other bands weren't doing at the time. And like I said, other bands kind of beat us to it. They must have had the same idea, but they also had bands going that were functioning when we were still looking for drummers.
Yeah.
So that was basically our thought process with that, was just trying to, come out with something original that would maybe blow people's minds, like going, wow, these guys are crazy, or, they're stupid, or whatever they would think,
Yeah. Yeah. And being as it now has been 20 years since And Time Begins, is there like a chance we can get a celebration somehow? Maybe do a tour where you played start to finish?
I doubt that'll happen. I hate to say this, but drummers that play with us right now are like, it is so complex drumming that if one mistake happens, the song's kind of shot, and we're like having to be like fumble and fumble. And as a vocalist, it'd be easy for me. It's still not easy. We've tried with other drummers to go back to the And Time Begin songs, and it's just like, shit, this is not easy.
Yeah.
And Gabe, our drummer right now, is insane. He is a great drummer, and that's what he says. Is like, man, those songs, if there's one mistake made on the drums, everything's shot.
Yeah.
And I think Casey Howard, our first drummer, he was just a freak. For some reason,
Oh,
that
wow.
guy was nuts. He just was like, no problem, I got this. And when he was into it, he was insane. He didn't play to a click, so our tempo would, fluctuate through the songs. Usually it would speed up, from the start to finish. It would end up really fast at the end. But he could play it, and he just had the confidence, and he knew how to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that'll ever happen for us again, but I can't say it won't. And right now we have Gabe Sieber, and we are very happy with Gabe. He is an incredible fucking drummer.
Yeah.
Incredible. He's a beast.
Yeah, and another thing I said on the And Time Begins page on the Metal Archives, it says Rebirth of Consciousness is the only song from this album that has never been performed live due to the song in question being deemed impossible to play live.
Yeah, what we'd have to do is probably reformat it, and it wouldn't be like the album. We'd have to play it to a tempo instead of just random time changes going on through the song. Tempo changes, I guess I should say, because we just made it to where we didn't think about it when we wrote it. We were young.
Yeah.
And having to like match like a different tempo at the time, you go off feel, but it doesn't always work. It would be sloppy. It wouldn't be like the album.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we were like, that's probably a song we'll never play live. We'd have to rewrite it, re-record it, and it wouldn't be the same songs. It would just be at a tempo.
Yeah. Yeah, which is totally understanding because you don't want it to end up like a freaking bloodbath.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a mess.
All right. Yeah, and then so of course going into the next album, Diminishing Between Worlds, because usually with the debut album you have like your entire life to write, and there was a lot of hype with the first album. When it came to recording Diminishing Between Worlds, did you felt like pressure to follow up And Time Begins?
Not really. I don't think we tripped on any of that. Matt was just going through a lot of things in his life, and so that album was really inspired by a lot of personal issues going on in Matt's life at the time, as far as the way he felt in the music, his feelings, in his heart and everything. Lyrics for me was always just, I don't know, just kind of our esoteric, style of rapping, kind of coming up with concepts. You know, I mean, my writing in the first album evolved from just being generic death metal type of topics, and I wrote Rebirth of Consciousness lyrics, and I just said, wow, I like this. So I started going that route. And so the first album, it was a concept, but in a strange way. The next album, Matt came up with titles because of what he was going through with his life. And it's not all of the songs, but he came up with good titles, and I just tried to imagine what the songs would mean and just came up with my ideas, you know, based off some of that.
All right. And
I've just tried to keep, you know, it like, I mean, we say psychedelic-y, but, you know, just kind of strange, whatever you want to call it, esoteric.
yeah. Yeah, and I know this year is also the 15-year anniversary of Diminishing Between Worlds. So, well, so how do you feel about that album now, 15 years later?
I think both me and Matt, a lot of people, that's agree. That's probably our best album,
Yeah,
song wise. That album is unbelievable. The songs are great, in
yeah,
my opinion. That's my opinion.
yeah. You definitely did a really great job on that album, like the title track, the enactment form, and I love like the outro, the Morpheus Oracle, which kind of like ends everything on a perfect note.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Like, that's Matt's whole thing.
hell yeah. Yeah, and it's still, like I said, it's still a fucking great album. Like you said, I consider it like you said, like a lot consider it like your best, kind of like your own like master of puppets, so to speak.
And while we're talking about that album, I just want to throw out there, like, I don't understand why Unique Leader won't repress that album or And Time Begins. It's like they'll sell. People are asking for it all the time. I understand that Unique Leader doesn't know what hardcore means because they think it's this modern, weird, slammy, cheesy metal. But really, they hold the albums, won't sell them, won't whatever, give them whatever, however the business works, to Nuclear Blast, who will print them, but they won't even print them. And I really don't understand that, because if they're a business, there is money in it. Maybe it won't be big money because it's just music. It's not like, you know, I mean, all it is death metal.
Yeah,
But still, it's like, I don't understand. There's a demand for it, where I'll see people online selling, you know, a Diminishing for Between Worlds album online, you know, putting it up there for like $100 for the CD,
yeah,
and it'll sell because
which is
people
ridiculous.
want it. So it's
Yeah,
like, not that the industry is going to be able to do that if they repress them, but it's really frustrating to. I just want to say this on record, because they should get off their asses and repress those two albums, or forfeit them to somebody that will press them. You know, if they forfeit them, hopefully it'd be to Matt. If not, then it should be to our current label.
yeah, because I see like I'm on Discogs right now, and like in Time Begins, I saw like a CD for like $50, and I
Yeah,
like get that album, but I'm not spending $50 on a damn CD.
exactly. I like I said, I saw it listed somewhere. You know, Diminishing for $100, and it actually sold.
Jeez,
And
people are
it's
that
like
desperate.
someone wanted it that bad. I mean, but yeah, I'm the same as you. I wouldn't spend too much money on an album.
Yeah, I noticed there's also like a 5-year gap between Diminishing Between Worlds and As Time Begins. Did you really wanted to like hone in your craft for the second album?
I don't know if it's about honing in the craft. I think it's just about the complexity of the music, and then also everyone's home life. You know, we're not just like rock stars with millions of dollars. We can't just sit around in a home music studio and just write albums. You know, we got deals, you know, life to deal with. Matt's married with a family, you know, and we all work, and just things are going on in life. You know, that's just how life is, at least for us, for Decrepit Birth.
Oh yeah.
You know, bills to pay and things to do and ordeals to get through.
Hell yeah. And then going into the next album, Polarity, I love that album. It was also the first album on a Nuclear Blast record. So how did you all end up signing with Nuclear Blast?
Um, we were on tour for the with the Diminishing album at that time, and Gerardo was the American you know, for the American president of Nuclear Blast at that time. It's their German company. And so he was coming around to shows because he'd hear the hype, but he's like, I don't go off hype. I'm going to go watch the band, see how the people react, see how the band actually is live, not their albums. And he was sold. He just saw us. I think we were out with the Black Dahlia murder at the time. And I sell merch. I don't really party or nothing. So I sit behind the merch booth and just relax basically and meet people and sell merch. And I guess Matt said that Gerardo, you know, came to the show and saw that we had a line for our merch going out the door and down the street a little ways. Not, you know, not like blocks, but
Holy shit.
too much for the lobby. And so it went out the door and down the street a ways. And he was like, wow. And then, you know, he saw the show and thought, wow, these guys put on a hell of a show. And him and Matt started talking, and I heard about all this later because I'm just behind the merch booth, you know, working. And yeah, so that's kind of how we ended up with Nuclear Blast. You know, Matt handled all the business with Gerardo from there.
Yeah, and then tell me about like Polarity, because it's still like very technical, but all still cool kind of death metal, but also has a little bit of like a emotional kind of like impact in there. Like the blast beats and the riffs are there, and so the death growls. And I feel like the songs are really complex, and I feel like it's changed up very often.
Yeah, I mean, that was just our next album that we were writing. Matt was just right. I don't know what was going through his head at the time other than new music. I had at that point been going through a lot of living in the Sierra foothills at that time. Schwarzenegger had sunk my business. You know, I was a contractor and I was just over the politics and told them, basically went to the state and threw my fucking license in their face, told them to fuck off, and went back, not for money, but just for me. I just went back to growing weed, you know, back in the outlaw days when it wasn't legal. I didn't do it for money or nothing. I just did it because I was pissed. I was like, fuck these guys. You know, I smoked weed back then, so I'm going to grow my own weed. And I went up to the foothills. I met some people and was living up there instead of by the coast, you know, just for the season to grow weed. And randomly found someone that found acid again. And because acid wasn't acid anymore. It had changed from the 80s and 70s when I was a kid. And started, you know, dosing and doing mushrooms and all that stuff again. So I took a long break from all that for years, and it just got ideas through some of my what do you call, like, vision quests. I didn't party. I would just like dose and then go into darkness and trip out and have visions of things. And so a lot of my songs on that are just based off of different visions I had on my my psychedelic journeys, whatever you want to call them. And also at the time, we were coming up to that whole 2012, you know, fable, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, which was
you know,
bullshit
prophecy.
now.
So I was using that, you know, along with like the psychedelic experiences I was having just to come up with ideas. So for me, that was a lot of that album was based off that. And then also, I know, I think if I could be wrong, but it seems like I heard Matt mention that, you know, Nuclear Blast was kind of like, hey, what's up? You know, we're waiting, because the songs, not all of them are actually complete. He had to be like, shit, I got to turn it in. They were still kind of in the, you know, the building stages. So the album would have maybe even been a little more, I don't know about layered. I don't know, just changed. I finally told Matt I don't want to learn the songs until they are complete, because I get it stuck in my head how the song goes. Then I go back to record with them, and it's not the same song anymore. And I'm like, what the fuck? You know, this isn't what I know. Now my brain is set in this one pattern of my vocal patterns, and the song is totally different because he's changed drums, changed riffs, and it's like, what, you know, I told him, don't show me stuff. Yeah, but until the song is complete, I don't want to put any lyrics to it anymore. You know, so I don't know where I was going with that, other than that's just another deal with us. But yeah, with that album, definitely it was like, you know, he turned the songs into me. They were done at that point. I recorded the vocals. But like he said, they weren't really finished. Nuclear Blast said they wanted the album ASAP at that point. We were taking too long.
Right. And I know you kind of took long. There was like a 10-year gap between Polarity and, of course, your last album, Axis Mundi, which came out in 2017, which I think I love Axis Mundi. That was like one of my favorite albums from 2017. So what was the thought process going into making that album?
We just wanted to take our time and actually do the concept where, you know, a lot of our albums are somewhat concept. This was definitely a story. And I told Matt again, until you know which songs go in which order, I don't want to put the lyrics to them, because I just write lyrics ahead of time and I'll make patterns off the riffs. And sometimes Matt will come up with patterns that are better than my patterns because he wrote the song. He might have ideas already in his head. And so we collaborated on that, and you know, put the songs together in the order from one till whatever, you know. And Nuclear Blast kind of got on him and said, "Hey, you know, what's up? You guys take too long." And he said, "There's no way that I'm gonna have our second album for you be less than our first album. You know, I'm not done yet." And they said, "Fair enough." You
Yeah,
know,
can't half-ass it.
yeah, we agree. Thank you for being straight up, and do a good job. Turn it in when it's done. And you know, if you don't mind me saying about the album too, though, along the storylines, the album before, you know, Polarity, a lot of people really are into the song Solar Impulse, which hopefully we're going to play live. We talk about it. It's just we're so busy, we never change our setup. We just stupidly stick to our stupid set that we always do. And but a lot of people are really into Solar Impulse, and Matt wrote the lyrics to that, actually. So I take what the song was about to me lyrically, and I continued the whole story from Solar Impulse throughout Axis Mundi.
Yeah.
So if you notice, the last lines of Solar Impulse is, "I take my last breath." What was it? "I close my eyes and take my last breath drifting." So that's how Axis Mundi starts.
Yeah.
Just with those lines. So just a little tidbit.
Yeah, I thought that's pretty awesome to make a nod from the previous album to influence the next one.
Yeah, I mean, the whole album is based off, to me, what I interpreted Solar Impulse to mean, since, like I said, Matt wrote those lyrics.
Right. And of course, I think you mentioned like you wanted to try to make it kind of like very conceptual. So what is the concept for Access Money? Because given like the album artwork had like the DNA kind of thing.
So I took, let me roll up. I'm parked by a highway here. Hold on a second. I took Solar Impulse as being whatever the first person character is of the song was dying. It died, you know, and it was, his energy is going wherever. Yeah. And so continuing that for the album, the concept, it was basically, if you look at, like, say, people die and they reincarnate and come back to life here. I could be mistaken because I'm not Hindu or Hindi, whatever. But there's a thing called samsara, like the wheel of samsara, or the samsara wheel, where it's like the whole, you keep coming back until and if we fail, and we keep coming back and we fail, we keep coming back and we fail. And this person, or whatever you want to call it, being finally succeeded in life and is going on to whatever's next. And who knows what's next? This is all I know is Earth. Yeah. But so I was just playing with the concept of, instead of the double helix DNA, like the next would be a triple helix. And that's, you know, it's just evolving. It's going back to the origin I call Bindu, again, from Hindi and other Eastern, you know, origin.
Yeah.
But so it's basically going back to the beginning of things and going through that, seeing, like, reliving all the past lives. I don't go through that in the songs, other than my subtle way of referencing it. And you know, the last song is Embryogenesis, which is a instrumental, but that's just the beginning of what's coming, whatever's coming next.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and of course, like you mentioned, you're sort of addressing like some concepts. Like, is there also like a lot of like research that goes in hand when doing like concept albums?
I definitely looked up like like Buddhism and Hinduism and different like things, just to get ideas, and realized I was writing these songs that like on Diminishing, I think it was Diminishing, but that there were songs that I was writing that were basically referencing all that same type of stuff, which like I kind of understand what I think the Big Bang is supposed to mean and whatever, and I phrase it certain ways where it's basically the same thing. It's like the Hindi version of creation. I don't know. I'm being really brief. I'm not going into too much detail. So, but yeah, a slight little bit of research of just looking up things, coming up with ideas. I don't want to be super redundant, say the same things on every album. That's one thing that's really hard
Yeah, yeah,
to keep saying the same phrases over and over again. It gets old.
yeah. And no, on Access Monday, you did like three cover songs at the end. You covered Orion by Metallica, Desperate Cry by Sepultura, and Infecting the Crypts by Suffocation. So, what made you guys decide to cover those songs in particular?
Um,
Oh,
Sorry, that's my answer. Matt decided that.
yeah.
Good songs though. So
Yeah, and they're really great cover songs. You kind of like almost in a way kind of like made them your own.
yeah, I mean, they're covers. Like I don't know if Matt learned exactly how to play Orion exactly, or Desperate Cry, or even Infecting the Crypts, but I mean, pretty close. If he didn't do it exactly right, he was pretty freaking close.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
to me, Orion, that's a good cover.
Yeah.
That's a long song.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good one.
And of course that was the first album with Samus on drums. How did he end up joining the band? Because I've been a fan of his YouTube videos.
Casey was starting to fizzle out and had other things he had to do, and we were on tour with Abigail Williams on at one point, and watching Samus drum for them. And Matt was like, "If we ever need a drummer, I'm gonna keep Samus in mind." And so they had talked, and he said, "Yeah, we get along." On that tour, we hung out a lot, and Matt Matt and Samus talked about it and thought that they get along well enough. And so when we needed Samus, we hit him up, and he said he wasn't doing nothing. He was down to do it. And at
Yeah.
that time, it worked out really good.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And did he in a way kind of like bring something new rhythmically to Decrepit Birth that you all didn't have previously?
I don't know. I never thought of it like that. I guess. I mean, because he's Samus and he's not Casey.
Oh, you're
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah.
Classic dude. That we had some incredible times with him.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, what as a drummer, he was a performer. I mean, it can't be too easy because you're stuck behind the kit doing what you got to do. But when he had time, he would somehow engage the crowd here and there, and yeah, it worked really good. We had some really good times with Samus.
Yeah.
I mean, that was definitely some good memories. Some really weird memories at the same time, but good.
Yeah. And being as it has been now 6 years since Access Monday, have you all started work on the next Decrepit Birth album? What's the status with that?
We're working on it. That's all I can say. I mean, the songs we're trying to go back to more like the "In Time Begins," but without being a million riffs only. So it's a little more actual songs, but fast and super technical. So it's slow going just because the technicality, of coming up with riffs. And I guess I mean I'm looking at it that way. I just know I believe we have at least 3 songs that I can't say are done. I'm not going to put lyrics to them yet, but one that's close enough. I started scheming patterns just at least to do something live, even if it does change. And then 2 more. that I've heard that are unreal. It's gonna be tough to do vocal patterns over, because I'm so used to like the way we've become more like normal songs, like rhythmic. And it's gonna be like, damn, this changes too often. But it's gonna be good. It's all I can say. Just people have to hold their breath or not and be patient. That's how it's gonna be.
Yeah. So before we go, Bill, I just want to thank you for this conversation. Great to be able to finally have Decrepit Birth on the show. Is there just anything else you want to plug, or anything, any final words you want to say to the viewers that are by any chance listening in?
Just be patient, and when you hear of us playing, come check us out and say hi, have a good time. We're all about a good time. That's what we do.
Yeah. So everybody, Bill from Decrepit Birth. See you next time.